Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and this is the Scripturian Society. And we're apparently confused. Ash made a weird expression. What happened?
See, I guess for you, the we're recording now, like the recording in progress voice already happened, but there was
Mhm.
like a delay on my end.
Oh,
So I was like, where is it? When is it coming? And they started talking. And I was like, oh, it must have already happened. And
it
it did,
happened
but
on
just
my
not for
end.
me. So confusing. Anyways, that over there is Karissa Harlow, the one with the good internet, aka Lewis. I am Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. Welcome to the Scripturian Society, where we talk about writing. And today I talk about makeup that's not makeup because that's already
Mhm.
immediately Carissa like logged on and I was like, so how do you feel about makeup that's not makeup? She was
I
like,
was like, I love it.
hypothetically,
Tell
I
me
guess
more.
it's good. Yeah. Anyways, this is not an ad, you guys, but I don't know if you guys have seen that makeup that's like is actually good for your skin. It's actually like a skincare product, and you can use it. We'll use it like after you've put on your skincare products, and it's like really simple. There's only a primer, a blush, and a lip gloss. But see, I live on a farm, and I don't go, and I work from home, but I also want to feel pretty. So this is like, and as Carissa said, especially like when it feels like you can't like justify why you're putting on makeup at the first place, to go to all the effort of wiping it off before you go to bed, that is my last priority. I'm not going to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm excited because this won't hurt my skin if I do
Yeah.
that. So hooray.
Sounds exciting. You have to tell me/us how it goes.
I will. I feel like this is the perfect makeup for introverts because it's not where this is not to impress anyone except to feel better about myself because I'm not going anywhere. I just want to feel good about how I look and also that I'm not hurting my skin.
Yeah.
Also, it's three things. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I can do three things. It's
Right.
not like 6 to 10 things. I can do that.
I know sometimes, confession, I will watch ASMR videos of people doing their makeup routine and it's very relaxing and I like it. But they're like, now on to step 12. And I'm like, I would have been done. Like the steps I do are 3 to 5 on a
Mhm.
good day. And
Yeah.
then they're just like, here are all these other things. And they put on, I'm like, I don't see any difference. Why are you taking 10 minutes to do this?
I know it's crazy. I used to do makeup for theater, and so
Mhm.
you think, and I'd like did makeup professionally for some youth theater. I mean, it's for youth theaters, but still, like I was like the head like makeup designer and artist for the shows,
Right.
and so you'd think that I'd be more into it, but I'm not. Like if
Yeah.
it's everyday makeup, I'm like absolutely. Maybe because of that, I'm like I know all of the steps that go into like stage makeup, and I've done it so many times. I'm just kind of like burned out on it because
Mhm.
oh God, there's so much. And then the
Yeah.
stuff that I really enjoy is like doing like fake gore and stuff. So,
Yeah.
which
You
is
should do
not
that every
appropriate for
day.
everyday wear. I wish.
We have different opinions. I say do it. Just like put gore on your cheek and then show up to a work Zoom meeting
Mhm.
and be like totally normal. They're like, "Are you okay?" Yeah, why? What's
Why?
wrong?
What are you talking about? Yeah, I did walk into a grocery store with a big like makeup gash on my arm, and there were some looks, and I was like, ha ha ha. Like I was definitely enjoying myself, but it's a treat.
Yeah.
I can't do it every day. It's just as a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Anyways,
Well,
how has your week been?
good. It's been less than a week because we're doing this a little early. So
Mm-hmm.
nothing new. Um just more puppy stuff. They now have nicknames. So the little one is the instigator because she will run up to the other and attack her and then, play the victim when she inevitably ends up hurt and on the bottom of the pile because she's smaller.
Sounds about right.
And then the other one, yeah, and then the other one is the Void, because she's black and we lose her in the dark, and Bison, because when her ears are back, she looks like a little mini bison.
That is so cute. The
So,
Void is also what we call
yeah,
Flora, our black cat. We call her Void
yeah,
too. It's funny.
yeah.
That's so
It's
cute.
like in the shadows. I'm like, are you there? And she's like, yeah, no problem. I'm right here. I've always been here. I'm like, I can't tell.
You're like, you haven't always been here. There's no way. Yeah, that's so cute. I have a puppy update
Yeah.
too.
Yay.
We got another puppy. You know how we got Brownie and then we were like, what about if we just did another one? What if we just got
Oh
another
my
one?
gosh. Yay. Tell
He
me
is so
everything.
cute. So he's a little Anatolian Shepherd puppy. He's got
Okay.
6 toes on 2 of his feet.
Is
So
that normal?
I don't believe so. I am
Okay.
convinced that there was an inbreeding situation. We didn't get him
Hmm.
from a breeder. We got him from these people who were like, our friends just dumped these puppies on us, and because they couldn't take care of them. And now we're like, what do we do with 5 Anatolian Shepherd puppies? So they were trying to like find homes for them. So we were like, And usually Anatolian Shepherds are very expensive. And so we were like, and we love Anatolian Shepherds, but like, obviously like we're more like into getting dogs from shelters or people who need to rehome. And so they were trying to basically just rehome the dogs. So we ended up getting our little Anatolian Shepherd boy. His name is Winchester because like Winchester, like rifles and guns, because of the 6 toes on his feet. Javi calls him a 6-shooter. So like a 6-shooter pistol. So like a Winchester.
Oh my gosh.
So his name is Winchester. So far I've called him Winnie, Winchester, Winnie the Pooh, and most recently Chester. So
I like Chester. Chester is the name of my little pink unicorn, or unicorn eraser that Lisa got all of us.
Yes.
Mine is Chester. So yeah, so I like Chester. Point,
you've definitely held on to that longer than everyone else. We all each had like a little pink unicorn eraser, and I had mine forever, and it got all bleached out in the sun, and I have no idea what happened to it. I have no idea. For years I had it, and one day it just disappeared into the void. Maybe your dog knows where it is.
Yeah. It's somewhere in the ether that is nighttime shadows. I don't know. Yeah. But mine is on my bookshelf, and the sun never hits it, and I never use it. So it's just sitting there, and he's still very nice and pink, and his head is like super turned around so that I could, Tetris him into the bookshelves. But otherwise.
Nice. That's admirable. Very, very admirable.
Thank you. But that's it. So how did
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Continue.
I was gonna say, how did Brownie react to Winchester?
Surprisingly, because she's so social and like loves other animals and people, I was like, she's gonna love having another puppy to run around with. Instead, she was like, you better not even look at my food. And I was like, oh, we're doing resource guarding. Great. So, I mean, it's understandable. And she's not aggressive. She just barked at him. And then I think she growled at him once when he got near her bed. So I was like, very reasonable dog behavior, but I don't like it. So basically, but if you punish it, it makes it worse because it just confuses them. So I was like, okay. So we basically just decided we're just going to take into food bowls when it's not eating time. So Brownie was previously grazing on her food throughout the day, which drives me bananas. But for some reason, she's a grazer. She's just not going to get to do that anymore. She will get to eat at breakfast and at dinner. And in between, the bowl just won't be out there. And we flipped up the dog bed. So right now, no one gets a dog bed because this was all on the front porch. So I think she thought the front porch was her space. So I'm like, until we re-neutralize this space, we're not going to have any dog stuff on it. So it's already been better since then. So they started even like, they didn't exactly play, but they kind of like ran around each other a little bit. So like an hour, not even an hour ago. So they're finally warming up. And we like set up a crate for Winchester to sleep in at night, like outside in the garage, because he's only ever slept outside. He hated it. He barked all night. And then we let him out at 5 a.m. So we were like, it's contained. I mean, we're in a property that's contained. He can't go anywhere. Then we couldn't find him. And we were like, oh no, where could he be? And then I called his name 100 times and he doesn't know his name yet. So I'm really just hoping he hears the tone of voice and knows I'm referring to him.
Yeah. Let's check that out.
Exactly. So then I was walking down between like one of the carport things on the property, like it's like a carport / barn. And all of a sudden I see like this little nose emerging from between 2 giant bales of hay. And I was like, wait, what is happening? And then there comes Winnie. He like slithered his way out. He found some space between these 2 giant hay bales. And it's like made like a little triangle that he can go all the way back. And I'm sure it's very cool and shady in there. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So he lives in the hay bales now.
He's a hay dog. He's not an indoor or an outdoor dog. He's a hay dog.
He's a hay dog. And he's so happy. And I like in there that you're like, what do I do? And it's probably the only place that's actually really cool outside. So I'm like, I guess it's fine. But Anatolian Shepherds get very big. So it's not going to last for long. He's got these giant feet. And of course the extra toes don't help. So
let him enjoy it while he can.
Yeah.
Luna is currently still small enough that she can fit underneath almost all the furniture. So so the 2 of them fight, and at first it was a little concerning, which was weird because they were half sisters. They essentially have known each other their whole life. Like they were born within 9 days of each other. And then we reunited them and they were like really feisty and aggressive with each other, and it's mellowed out and everything. But sometimes if it still gets like a little too much, Luna will just like go under the furniture and Aurora can't follow her because she's too big. So
that is hilarious.
That won't last forever for Luna, but
no.
Yep.
That is funny. The cats don't know that there's another dog yet.
Like they haven't come out, or they just think he's visiting.
He's not an inside dog, and so they just don't know yet.
Oh, right.
I want to bring him in, but he doesn't want to come in. He's only ever been outside, like in a doghouse or something. And so I figure the hay bales are also under a carport, so he's about as sheltered as he can be. So I guess if he wants to stay in there, he can. We're in the process of getting dog houses. We tried to put him in a nice cozy crate, like a very big crate with a bunch of blankets in the garage, and he was just not having it. So, yeah.
Well, to each dog his own.
I guess so. To each dog their own. But he is such a cute little fluff. He's so fluffy. It's hilarious. Like we got him. We immediately brushed him. We washed him. We brushed him again. We put on some flea medicine just to make sure. And we were like, he's beautiful. Excellent. And then now he sleeps in a hay bale. So
yeah, it won't last.
No, he's like covered in dirt. And I'm like, great.
Gosh.
Here we are again. So I don't know how he could be an inside dog because he wants to be in the hay bales and he's got long fur. But it's funny because on his legs, it's like woolly. He looks like he's got sheep's legs. It's so funny. He's a silly looking boy.
What color is he? I don't know what color. Like, do they come in many colors?
They come in many colors. The dogs have many colors.
Yeah.
They're all are kind of cream, and then they can have like different markings. Okay. So a lot of them, I think the more common ones are like cream with like darker brown around like the face and ears and stuff. But he's like a little more like unique in that he's got a couple little like blackish spots just on his nose, and he's almost white. He's not even cream. He's like white with cream spots, and then like a couple tan spots and like one big dark spot to match his little freckles. So he's got lots of colors. He's so cute and so much fur. So funny.
Yeah.
And so then when we bathed him, he was like a quarter of the size, and we were like, oh my God, that's hysterical. And he was so upset about the bath.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes they'll show videos of dogs swimming or taking baths. I've never met a dog that likes taking baths. So
me either.
I don't know what you guys do to make your dogs like it, but
yeah, I'll take tips. DM us with your how to make my dog like his baths tip, because my dogs don't. It's very annoying. Nope.
I wish they did.
Yep. Anyways, I guess do you have any book recs this week?
No, I'm still on The Witcher, so that's kind of a carryover from last week. Yeah. What about you? That's all I got.
It's okay, because you've been going like full force with like the whole series. So I think okay, so I don't have any like actual book recs because I think I already mentioned Jude the Obscure. Did I already mention Jude the Obscure? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so that was last episode. This week, I swear, I think for my book recs, I really just talk about what we're reading on That Pretentious Book Club, our sister podcast.
It's like a not so subtle pin for the other podcast.
It's like an accidentally really subtle pin, like really not subtle pin, but it works because I also don't really read much outside of it, so I don't have another option. And then like it's just authentic. It's the most authentic a big blatant pin for another podcast is ever going to be. So here's the pin for this episode for That Pretentious Book Club. We're reading Twilight. So I don't know if I can actually book rec it yet, because I know I read it once and was like, it's fine. I'm reading it again now as an adult, so I don't know yet. Like I'm only a couple chapters in, so it's fine. It's fine so far. I don't know that it's groundbreaking. I think maybe its originality is what made it so popular at its time.
Yep.
But it's good. I mean, it's definitely good. It's well done. I don't know if it's amazing. So I'll get back to you guys on that once I'm actually finished reading it again.
Everyone, Twilight like comes in phases. Like when it first came out, everyone was like, we love this, it's the best thing ever. And then there was the wave of haters that were like, this sucks. And then it was another wave of like, love what you love and don't be ashamed. And then it was like another wave of hate. So it kind of goes back and forth. But I read it in, I want to say 7th or 8th grade. And I think Twilight was the bridge between me reading middle grade and then me starting to read older stuff. So like I think there's a certain groundbreakingness, not in the sense of like the plot itself or anything, but in the timing for a lot of people that are our age, because it came out kind of at that point when you were starting to move from middle grade to YA, especially because middle grade and YA were still not really solidified genres yet. So I think it was just a bridge. And I mean, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I'm not going to lie.
No, it's enjoyable. I mean, it's not, I think that a lot of people are like, it's the most amazing book ever. And when you're a writer, you're like, is it? I mean, it's good, but I also think that writers can get kind of snooty and we're like, well, it's not high class fiction, so it's not good. And I am very much usually in the middle where I'm like, I enjoyed it. I mean, is it a masterpiece? I don't remember thinking it was a masterpiece, so I doubt I'm going to think it's a masterpiece this time, but I enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it this time again too. So, I mean, it's an enjoyable read. Go for it.
It was just the kind of book that I, as a reader, knew that other non-readers had read it. So it was something I could talk to them about without being bored out of my mind, because it was a book. And they also knew what I was talking about. On like kind of a middle ground point though, is the back cover still the same? Because it had the whole like of 3 things I was absolutely certain, right? And then it lists these 3 things. Does anyone remember that? That was like the back blurb. And I remember reading that and being like, I am so intrigued. And then I read the book and I was like, loved the book, confused as to the placement of that particular blurb in the book. I was like, I feel like this was written specifically for the back of the book. And it didn't really fit in the book, but I liked the blurb and I liked the rest of the book. So it was just kind of this weird middle ground point that everyone's like, I love it, I hate it. And I'm like, I just feel like the blurb is weird.
Like, I have a highly specific take on a very specific issue. Oh, that is funny. Oh, that's entertaining. I don't remember. I bought mine off Thrift Book, so it's not a new copy. So I probably has that on the back. I haven't looked.
It is.
I'm not great at reading. I'm sure it is. Well, I guess we'll see when I post the picture, because I post pictures of all the books every week. So can you guys, I apologize if you guys can hear how horrible, I mean, you can, because this is a podcast. All you're doing is hearing how horrible my voice is. I was surprised because like my mom and my husband are having these insanely horrible allergies. And usually mine are pretty bad too. Not as bad as my husband's, but usually worse than my mom's. And I've been like, I'm fine. I mean, I'm a little bit like sniffly, but nothing compared to like usual, where like the first year I moved back here, I like went to the doctor 3 times for sinus infections the same year from allergies. Nothing like that. I guess I think I'm knock on wood better at like maintaining to prevent it, but now I have this thing going on with my voice. So I thought I was good. I thought it was fine. And I think secretly I've had all of this like gross allergy drainage, and now it's taken a toll on my vocal cords. Right when I was like, this is a little bit of a writing update, so I'll talk about it more. But right when I was like, you know what I should get into? Recording audiobooks. Anyway, so now I'm like, nobody wants to hear an audiobook spoken by someone who sounds like they've been chain smoking cigarettes for 50 years. So
unless you have a character who has been smoking cigarettes for 50 years.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not in my book. Maybe I just need to like, I'm going to be an audiobook narrator for a very specific subset of books that have like smoker characters. That's what I'm going to do. That's interesting, actually.
Very specific, but you can get very good at it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, what's our word of the week?
Oh, okay. Our word of the week is Quidnunc. 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 And it is based in Latin. So it is a person who is eager to know the latest news and gossip, a gossip or busybody.
Quidnunc. I think Javi's a bit of a quidnunc.
Oh, yeah.
I think he is. He always knows the newest gossip or news before me. Always.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to tell him, I'm going to be like, you're such a quidnunc. And he's going to be like, what does that mean? I'm going to be like, nothing bad at all, actually. It's just a descriptive word.
Yeah, it's just a neutral kind of word. I think if my Latin is coming back to me at all, I think it means that which is nothing, or nothing out of something, or something like that. I think literally that's what it is.
That's interesting. Quidnunc. That makes sense. That makes sense for like making a mountain out of a molehill. I feel like that's a lot of what gossip and news is. That's funny.
Yep.
Quidnunc.
So if you're a busybody, you're also a quidnunc. I don't know. I'm just thinking like if you're gonna kind of like slightly insult someone, but you don't want them to know that you're doing it, I mean, don't do that because don't be mean. But also, if you like really have to, but you don't want conflict, use Quidnunc.
You're so nice.
My
You're like,
advice.
don't do that. And I'm like, no, do it because it's funny. And then they can do it back, but do it. Don't do it in like meanness, but do it.
Don't go too far, but do it.
Sometimes I wonder, I have a hard time making friends. And then I like will retroactively hear something that I just said out loud. And I'm like, could that be it? No.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh man, that's good though. Well,
Yeah.
I guess should we get into our theme for this episode?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about soapboxing characters. And my definition of this, what I think of or mean when I say this, is when the author uses their characters to just kind of preach at their readers or like really hammer in a point that is not particularly relevant to the plot, or even if it is, that goes like too far to the point where it's annoying.
Yeah.
So like a character gets up on their soapbox and starts preaching, and everyone, the characters are all like, yeah, this is what we think too. And the reader's like, this is not what I was here for.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good definition. That's really exactly what it is. And I think it's important to note that soapboxing can be political, or it can be moral, or it could be religious. It's usually one of the three. And I think for like, if there's one type of soapbox that you tend to get on, you might think that if you do a soapbox in one of the other realms, you might not really recognize it as soapboxing. So you need to be careful, because there's been a couple times where I'm trying to be like uber careful about not going on like a moral soapbox. But then I will read back and be like, did I just get on a political soapbox instead? Because I wasn't
Right.
looking out for that specifically. And so I like redirected the soapbox. Yeah. So, I mean, this is not to say that you can't like try and communicate a message into like in your book, which we've talked about before, which is the importance of having a really strong theme in your book, and also leaving a lot up to your readers to decide for themselves, which is where soapboxing never really works. Doesn't really work in real life for the same reason, which is that you cannot just change somebody's mind if they're not ready to have their mind changed. Kind of like you cannot control how somebody perceives what you say. So even if you think you're 100% right and you think you have all the facts to back it up, you cannot control how someone else is going to perceive those facts, or going to perceive what you're saying, or like they could hear something totally different. So I think that's where it can kind of like, not only is soapboxing, I think it's just really, really bad narrative style. It will pull people right out of the story. Some people it will offend, but honestly, perhaps most importantly, if you guys are doing this, hopefully not, but if you are, like, it just doesn't work. So I mean, like that alone is the reason to avoid it, is that it is not effective.
Yeah,
so.
It is practically bad.
It is practically useless. And also it messes up your story, because it takes people out of the story. And also everybody, your readers, like, you don't like being preached at, right? So neither do your readers. Like, we live in a day and age where everyone is kind of sensitive about being preached at, because whether it's about like some new social thing or some new virtue signaling or like religion or whatever, like we're all tired of being preached at. Some people are escaping to your book to escape that. So do not preach at them about something while they're in your book. Build in your themes. Absolutely. They could be political. They could be religious. They could be moral. They could be whatever the hell. Put it in your theme. Don't soapbox. Don't do that to your readers. They didn't come here for that.
True. Because I think as writers, and this is true of most people just in their daily lives, but with writers, it comes out in our writing. You obviously hold certain views about all those things.
Yeah.
And so just naturally, those things are going to come out, and that's usually fine. If they're just coming out naturally, you're probably not going to end up soapboxing. The problem is when you kind of recognize you're doing it and you're like, I can go on about this. I could go further. And so typically, if you find yourself just kind of naturally writing something out, when you go back to edit it, try not to add anything to it, because what you came up with the first time was what you intended to say. It was probably most relevant to the plot or the character. And the problem that I notice a lot is you do have themes. And I'm a big proponent of, if you're going to write, you need to have something to say with it. You shouldn't just write for fun and entertainment. That's all good. Writing should be entertaining, but that's not really the only purpose of writing. And so you should have something to say with it. But you do need to kind of like stay on point, stay on topic. If you do have some kind of religious opinion and you're like, I want this book to be about this, I want to shine some light on this, whatever, stay in that lane. Try not to go too far into every other opinion you hold about everything.
Yeah. I
Stick
totally
to one topic.
Yeah.
Or at least a few. Like if there are some, related points or whatever, go for it, but don't let yourself go off on tangents that aren't relevant. So this is like something I was kind of noticing in The Witcher. And I said it in my Catherine's Corner episode that the older your audience, the more you can go on tangents, because it just becomes more important to talk about complexity, but you still have to stay on topic. You can go deep, but you can't go broad. And so I think that's a good thing to think about when you're trying not to soapbox, is if it's relevant to your plot, if it's a theme you're really trying to hit home, go deep, don't go broad. And then if you have like a series, each book can kind of be slightly different. I think you still need to have like a series theme and everything. But if you're like, I have these 3 issues that I really want to talk about, maybe try to focus one in each book instead of cramming all 3 into each book. Because first of all, then it becomes difficult to really expand on them over time if you're trying to do it all at once. But also because it can then just focus the plot of your book and the message of your book and the theme of your book. So again, it doesn't have to be one. It just needs to be focused and all related. So
I agree. I totally agree. I think that's a great point. Cause I mean, like, first of all, just like limiting, like pick the one or two, pick the one for your book that's most important to you, the message you want to get across. For your series, you can pick a few, but it does help to focus on like one per book. It also will just make your book feel more like whole and consistent and intentional. So just that's something to keep in mind. And your like point could be something as simple as, this is a good or bad way to handle grief. I feel like I've seen that one a lot in books, especially like in third books in a series where some characters have died. And then the third book has this theme that's all to do with grief. And inevitably there will be some moment where the characters are sitting down together and one character is basically expressing their thoughts on grief. And that's great, especially if it's not more than a paragraph at a time. Like, first of all, pick your theme, like narrow it down, try and like, limit what your points that you're going to make a little bit, just because nobody picked your book just to hear all of your opinions on everything. It feels like maybe they would. I think as writers, we're like, obviously they want to hear us. They want to be told a story. And we have a great opportunity to communicate with readers via subtext, via themes and stuff, and to tell a great story and entertain first and foremost. So it can be tempting to think that they're really interested in our opinions. Not in the book form. If they are, they will message you. You can like have your own YouTube channel. Like there are other ways, if you want a platform, there are other ways to make use of it, but the book itself is not your platform, at least for that kind of stuff. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I think also regardless, you want to be careful about in internal dialogue, and so monologues or whatever, and in dialogue, you just don't want to like go off on your theme, whatever your theme is, or whatever the point is you're trying to make. Like really, if it's like a big sensitive thing, like if it's like people are very sensitive to religion. So if you want to say something about religion and you want to be specific, you're probably going to be the most effective and turn the least people away by doing it in tiny little doses. So like maybe one character mentions something and another character has kind of a reaction to it. And then maybe it comes up again a few chapters later and maybe there's a little bit more conversation about it. Maybe you have one of a little bit more later in the book. Build there. But don't do, I would caution ever having a full-on conversation about it. It's hard to do. It can be done, but you need to feel really confident that that conversation belongs in the plot of your story to do it, which can just be kind of hard to make it relevant to the plot. But if you can do it, but build to it. If you can't build to it, don't do it.
And this is, my love of world building coming in. I feel like you should have some conversation in your book for character development and to kind of back up your theme. But really the way that you're kind of building your world and the direction of the plot, that should in and of itself be your message, if that makes sense. So the way that maybe society functions and the things that you point out as right or wrong in society, that's a good way to get across a theme, instead of having people just like talk about it too much. I don't know. It's kind of an ambiguous thing, but the way that you build that world, the way that you build a magic system, is it a right? Is it a privilege? That in and of itself is going to say something about what you think something else is. Maybe magic represents, religion, maybe it represents rights, maybe it represents a political point that you're making.
Yes.
And so then going into detail about what the function and the origin of that magic system is it's not that you can't then back it up by conversation, but should in and of itself be enough to kind of get across what you're trying to say. And so then the conversations are going to come about more naturally around that instead of being too specific. So like you were saying, you know, kind of piecemeal the message you're trying to say. I think it can be really effective if you have a point you're trying to make to talk tangential to the topic. Most people, if you give them something directly that they disagree with, they're just going to stop listening. If you can build a point that's similar to say like, well, if it's like this, then wouldn't it be like this over here?
Yeah.
That point, they're going to listen to that first point. They're not going to listen to your direct, like throwing it in their face kind of a point.
Yeah, like communicating in parallels. Communicating in parallels is so much more effective. And I feel like if you think back to like some of the biggest novels that people point to and still think about, oh, that book made it great. I think about like some of like the original dystopian novels, like 1984 or whatever. It's not about what the characters say. It's about the world itself and how the characters interact with the world itself. So that if you can, it's harder to do because it takes a lot more brain power and a lot more planning. But it's so much more effective. You will not lose people to your message, and it will be more effective in communicating your message than like having your characters be the ones to go on. Like every now and then they could mention it, and you can do it, and I've seen it done, and it's okay. But it's just not as effective as making it a parallel, and the world is what reveals whatever the message you're trying to get across. Having your characters tell your readers is just not as effective as having a parallel tell your readers.
Yes,
that makes sense.
I definitely think that. I do think though that if you do want your characters to talk about things directly, this is something that I find frustrating. And I'm not necessarily going to go into detail about which side I think it comes from all the time, because it comes from all sides of every issue. If you as an author believe that something is right, that doesn't mean that all of the characters that are good and likable should hold the exact same opinions as you, and all the evil characters should hold all the opposite opinions as you. Your villains are going to agree with you on some things. Some villains are going to believe slavery is wrong. Don't just make them bad in every possible way to communicate their villain. You might have some characters who are good and who are likable and who are meant to be the heroes of the story that disagree on what the correct religion is, or what a certain moral point is, or a political point. And particularly within the group of heroes or a group of villains, there should still be some disagreement. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of an ideological agreement on whatever the conflict is, because they chose sides for a reason. But if you just have all of your good characters believing the same thing and all your bad characters believing the opposite, that's really boring. First of all, there's no depth to that. And also, if you give them different opinions, you can have two heroes, and this is something that The Witcher did that I really like. You can have two heroes having a discussion about it and having differences of opinions about it. And if it's not super important to like what side they're going to fight for, or you know, something that would make a romance unhealthy or something like that, then having that conversation in probably shorter form is best. But having that conversation is fine so long as it's not just two characters going back and forth saying the same thing. Like, yeah, I agree with you. You're totally right. And then, yeah, I agree with you. You're totally right. It should go back and forth, where maybe one is like, I totally disagree. I think we need to do this instead. And so I just find it annoying, particularly because as an author, you do need to understand that when it comes to politics, it's probably going to be 50-50. When it comes to religion, it's going to be even more than two options. Morally, people are going to have a lot of different opinions, and you don't want to alienate all the readers that disagree with you on a subject by giving them no heroes to be able to relate to.
Very true.
You want there to be differences in the heroes and differences in the villains, so that whatever someone's opinion, they are willing to hear out what you're saying, because they know someone in that conversation is kind of similar to them. And also that they don't feel like putting the book down because they're just being preached at. Because again, tangential is good. You should go tangential, and it's good to have conversations. But feeling like something you really, really disagree with is just being shoved in your face and being, you know, talked about as though it's obviously the right answer. There's no real discussion about it when people don't agree, when people agree with each other. There's just
Mhm.
an assumption that it's the correct thing to think.
Yeah.
And then you don't go deeper. You don't go into, well, why is that the correct way to think? When you have disagreement, that's really when you go deep. And that's, again, where I think you should go. If you're going to talk about an issue, don't go broad, go deep. And having that disagreement allows your readers to really connect with at least one side and be willing to hear you out. I feel like I repeated that point several times, but that's kind of what I'm trying to say.
And I think it's important to keep in mind, it can be really difficult, especially when we feel like really passionately about something being like morally right or wrong, especially but politically as well. It can be really hard to admit to ourselves that not only does the other side have its points, but they probably have some good points too. Like that's most people are not just absolute morons. Like just because somebody, I can think of things that I just disagree with wholeheartedly, I find really upsetting, and I believe I have good evidence and points to back up my reasons for that. But I have to remember that the other side has, if not equally good reasons, they still have a lot of valid
They're
reasons.
Convincing. Yeah, they're convincing to them.
Reasons. Yeah. And there's even if, I mean, some of my reasons probably aren't valid and some of their reasons probably aren't valid, but that doesn't invalidate all of their reasons or all of my reasons. And that doesn't make them a bad person that they disagree with me. And it doesn't make me a bad person that I disagree with them. Yes. And so I think that's kind of like really just to be jumping off of your point, which is that it's really good to have heroes, villains, whatever, people disagree about things without any of them being presented even as this is the right one and this is the wrong one, because your readers will make up their own mind. If you try to present the right answer as the quote unquote right answer, it is not going to be perceived that way. You're still going to turn people off. The best thing you can do is present all of the reasons, all of the issues that people have on both sides to your readers, because sometimes it's as simple as that. Like a lot of the things that I believe, I truly think that if people had all the information, because like things I've studied a lot, let them think through it. I think a big problem, I think there's more things that people agree about than not, but we just don't all have the same information.
Right.
So I think the best way you can actually be effective in communicating is just present your readers with information. And a great way to do that is via having characters of all kinds who have different opinions. And like Karissa said, conversation is a great way to do that. Lifestyle, life choices, even like clothing choices and cultural differences between different characters is another great way to do that, especially if you're like weaving it into world building. But I think you'll be so much more effective at communicating your message if you're not saying mine is the right message and here's why, saying here is the issue and here are both sides of the issue. And you can go ahead and in the plot, you can kind of show like the benefits of maybe one approach versus another approach, but you don't want to skew it unfairly. You need to be realistic. So if you can't show that one is realistically better than the other, don't let your readers decide. Because also a decision that you force down someone's throat is not going to be a sticking decision. It's only going to be a sticky decision if they've come to that conclusion themselves. So I think maybe something that we all as writers need to remember is that it is not our job to change people's minds for them. It's our job to give them material to change their own minds if they want to, if they're willing to, if they're ready to, whatever it's about. But our job is not to change people's minds. It is to be there when they're ready to change their own minds. And we have, material for them, but we also tell them a great story, because first and foremost, someone came to your book for a good story. So tell them a good story and chill about the message. Yep. You can go back in and you can bulk it up a little bit. You can pull it into the world more, but like your story, just don't do it at the sacrifice of your story. I've too many times, every time I've seen someone take a stance in a book and I haven't liked it, it's because it's been at the sacrifice of the quality of the story.
You want layers to your book. Someone should be able to read it on just a plot and character level and still be satisfied. Right. It's just that the message is also there for people that want to go deeper.
Yeah, exactly. The message should never be so in your face that people who don't want to read it for a message are still like, oh my God, I can't read around the message. I can't get away from it. You still need to have, like Karissa said, level. So service level, people should be able to read your book and maybe not even immediately get what you're talking about. That's okay. That's good, because that person isn't reading to have their minds changed anyways. Like that's not the person whose mind you were going to change. That's not why they came to the book. So layers is definitely important, and especially when you're trying to communicate something.
Yeah. I think also kind of on your point about presenting all options, I think it's really important that we not strawman people. So straw manning is when you take someone's perspective or opinion and then you kind of whittle it down to its most simplistic form so that it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's really annoying. So I'm going to say something like a little controversial. I know there's this big push. There's this big push for like diversity, and that's great. And one of the diversity things is religion. And so everyone's like, we should have more Jews and Muslims and all of these kinds of people in literature. And I agree. But I also think it should be important for people to recognize that I can think of almost no well-written Christian characters in secular media. And people assume that that's kind of where they are. That's like the base. That's assumed what it is, but like it's really not. And if any of you have ever, if you're Christian or whatever, it's really hard to find Christian characters that have any any understanding of what it's actually about. So I get annoyed when it's kind of the assumption is, oh, there are plenty of Christian characters, we need to go with other religions. I'm like, can we get a couple good Christian ones too? Because that would be nice.
It's hard.
Yeah. And all of the Christian characters that people, I mean, like movies, TV shows, books, everything, they're strawmanned. It's this very simplistic version of someone that is not a Christian looking in saying, yeah, I understand this completely. And then writing a character that evidences that they do not understand it completely.
No.
So you really should do, it doesn't have to be super extensive, but do some research on the points of views you're going to be talking about. If you're going to have some kind of a religious debate, make sure you're not straw manning the other side. Make sure that you've had a conversation with someone that differs from you so that you understand how those conversations actually go. You can still end up on your side of things in the sense of, you know, your ultimate conclusion or what you're kind of trying to lead people to consider, because I know that for me, it's not that I want to like preach at people, but I want to present the point of view that I just don't see anywhere. I don't see people presenting a fair point of view. So that's what I want to be able to do. And so I would just do a little bit of research to understand it. You're obviously not going to be able to understand every religion super perfectly because you can't belong to every religion, but you can be fair to them and have a decent representation of what they are. And that starts with having a, you know, fair, critical thinking perspective on your own, and then applying that same kind of rigor to other people. And it should start with your own and then go to other people, because you don't want to be more critical of others than you are of yourself. You should try not to be more critical of yourself than others, but if you're going to lean one way, lean that way.
I agree.
So don't straw man.
I totally agree. And to tie in your don't straw man point to the back to the present on the information point, I think it's important to point out you need to provide all of the information, good and bad, for both sides. Do not do the thing where you're like, I presented both sides, but you skewed one side, making it look really bad, because that is straw manning. Don't do it, because guess what? Your readers aren't stupid. They've been straw manned in real life. So they know what it feels like. They know what it looks like. So if you try and do that, they will recognize it in a second and probably close the book. I know I would. So definitely you want to know both sides. Like, and I think this is where writing, I think, really grows you as a person too, because first of all, you're writing from so many perspectives. And so that alone, you already have to really try and get into other people's heads. But especially if you're like going to try and communicate a message and you want to take it and you want to approach it from the strategy of, I'm going to provide all the information. Well, then you need to actually not only know the information, but you need to understand the feelings that are behind all of that. And you need to express it for what it's worth, because it's disrespectful to the people that you are disagreeing with, who have just as much value and intelligence as you do, to not show what they're saying in the best light. You need to make your points in the best light possible. And you also need to make their points in the best light possible, because that's what they think about it. That's what they feel about it. If they didn't think that their opinion was the best opinion or most moral opinion, they wouldn't have it. And so it's disrespectful to just assume that they are immoral or stupid or just haven't thought it all the way through. They have, and they've come to that conclusion for their own reasons. So you need to present both sides in as best the light as possible. And I think that that's actually the best way to come to a more objective conclusion. You might find that your mind has changed on an issue by doing that, or you might not, but you might see some more points about it that are just, I think that's the best way when you to find the points that like are almost impossible for somebody to object to. If you like compare the two both in their absolute best lights, and this one truth just seems inalterable no matter what, then you can go, I have really thought about it. I have really looked at it from both sides. There's been no bigotry involved. I have really truly wanted to see and believe in their points. And then I still come to this conclusion. that is the most convincing way to make a point. That is the most convincing way to know what you're talking about. Because also, guys, if you are not very much able to back up your point you're trying to make, maybe think about it more first. Don't, because your mind might be changed later, and then you have to backtrack in something you've already published. And also just because it's irresponsible. So lots of practical reasons and moral reasons to just really know what you believe and why before you're going to make a point, whether it's moral or religious or political or whatever. But, and then just be as fair as possible to the other side. Like, be good. Not actually, I'm going to say, don't be fair, be good to them, because you would want them to be good to your side. And if we could all just start being good to each other and stop assuming that one side is hateful and one side is like bigoted, or one side is stupid and one side is just mean, because I feel like these are the sides that we somehow assign people who disagree with us about.
Or like, if people are wrong, they're trying to be evil. They're trying to hurt us. And it's like, no, they think about this differently than you. They
think about it differently. Or like, these people are selfish because they believe this. That's a big thing that I've seen a lot lately. And I'm like, it's just not true. You can't put down like a whole 50% of all people to say that, well, they're just being selfish. They clearly see something else in that approach that makes them think it's the best for everybody. And could they be wrong? 100%. But to say that it's because they're selfish or they just haven't thought things through is just, it's, first of all, it is really naive to assume that. And also, it's a jerk move, because you don't want them to do that to you. They'll do it right back.
And it's also important to remember that they may be being selfish, but you might also have some opinions because you're being selfish too. And I mean, you shouldn't. You should try not to have opinions for that reason, but don't, throw stones at glass houses.
Yes, exactly. I think that that's the best way to make your point, is to I would say, whenever possible, I'm trying to decide if I want to make this like an always rule. I think I do. I'm going to say, I think you should always, if you're trying to make like a point, like a thematic point or whatever about politics, religion, morality, I think you should always present the pros and cons of both sides. I think always. I really didn't think about it that much until now, but now I'm thinking, I can't think of a situation in which it would be better to not provide all of the good things about the alternate point of view. I can't think of a situation where that wouldn't be beneficial. So I say always present the good and the bad of both sides.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, if obviously as a writer, you need to kind of know what you're doing, but if you are actually having a conversation with someone, you don't need to make their point for them. So if you're like, I legitimately don't understand why you would think this, then let them explain, and also listen to them. And if you're a writer and you're trying to write, like, I don't understand why someone would believe this, then find someone that does believe that and ask them. Don't take the straw man. Don't try to come up with your own answers. Find someone that thinks that and ask them.
Well, it's easy, and it's because it's easy to go, oh, well, I know that they think that this reason, I just think I just don't think that's a good enough reason. Well, you need to ask someone who believes in that reason why they think that's a good enough reason, and not like in a judgy way to get in a fight, but because there's a very good chance there's some kind of logic. Everyone's logic train is different too. I've noticed, like, I will do stuff that people think is so illogical, and in my head, I'm like, you don't understand. Like, it is an absolutely clear, like, train of logic that took me to this point. And people are like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, there was logic to it. And it offends me that you think that I wasn't being logical in some way. Was my logic flawed? Often, but there was logic there.
Or people have different priorities. So maybe someone is like, well, my priority is this. And you're like, great, but mine is this. And that's why I'm coming to this different conclusion. So
100%. That happens to me when we've been painting. And I think Javi's priority is quality. My priority is speed. I want to get done with it faster. So he'll be like, why are you doing it like that? And then the way that he phrases it makes it sound, I get tripped up, and I'm like, why am I doing it this way? And then I remember, because I want to finish fast, because finishing it faster, we're getting this done. We're going to knock this house down in a couple of years. The quality is not that important to me. The speed is far more important to me in this scenario. Therefore, I have chosen to approach it in this way. And I do that kind of stuff all the time. But usually you don't sit down and explain all of that to somebody. And neither should your characters.
Well, and it all comes down to character motivations, right? When we say that you need to know your character motivations, it does come down to this. What are their priorities? How does that affect their beliefs? There are a lot of books where a character will say, this is my priority. And then their belief, I'm like, but that's the belief that prioritizes this thing, not that thing. And so you want to be consistent. You want this, you have to think this through, have a good understanding of why people believe the way they do. And for every issue, there are going to be 5-6 reasons that people will land on that as the correct answer. So you can go really deep into this. And I guess what's so frustrating for me is that when I see books that, particularly, I know books come in trends and there are waves of different things, but you read like 10 books in a row and they're all the characters believe the same thing, or they have the same opinion about why something is right or wrong. And it always comes across really shallow. Like I said, if you're going to write something, you should be saying something, and what you're saying should be adding something to the conversation. Don't just echo what other people have said. Don't just parrot back what you've heard other people describe, right? You need to have such a complete understanding of it that you have a different new point to add. Yes. And that's what's really going to make a story interesting anyway. So it does come down to plot and character. It will make your characters more interesting. It will make your world more interesting. But don't just parrot something because it's what's popular to say. And it's always really clear to me, and this might be, maybe people that agree with you don't notice it. Maybe I don't notice it in books that I agree with. But if if you're being really shallow to an issue, like you haven't thought it through, but you're just like, this is obviously the correct answer. I've always been taught this is the right answer. Readers sense that. We can see that. And we therefore don't take you as seriously. If you can't give us these arguments to back, and not arguments in the form of a character actually arguing for you. Again, don't do that unless it's absolutely essential to your plot. But in the way that you build the world, in the way that you build your characters, do they fit? Do they make sense? And if there's a disconnect, it's probably because you haven't thought through well enough why you believe what you believe. And so you're making this point, but you're contradicting it with the way you've built your world or whatever. And I think readers see through that. I don't think readers are dumb. I don't think young readers are dumb. I think arguably kids and middle grade readers probably notice that more than older readers, because they're at that point where they're first starting to think about that stuff anyway. So they're like, this doesn't make sense. But you should still be careful about it in YA and new adult and everything above too. People aren't stupid. And even if some people are stupid, not all of them are. And some people might be fine with it, particularly if they end up agreeing with you. But you're not just communicating with people who agree with you. Hopefully, maybe that's something you want to do, but I don't know that that's particularly helpful to giving a message. You want to communicate with people that disagree with you too. And so you don't want to overdo it that way. So
I agree. I think, like you said, like your character's beliefs and motivations need to really be in line with whatever message you're going to try and communicate through their story. So like if you're going to say something about like I just thought like immediately of like if a character thinks like family's the most important, like, and that's their like big belief, right? And then at the end of the book or something, like they sacrifice their family for the world. I guess you can make a point there, but it doesn't really seem in line if that's a core.
You would have to show some kind of development about where they changed that priority. And why.
Because if family's the number one priority and that's what they've always felt, but then like they get called away to like to go save the world or something and just leave their family behind, that doesn't really track because the motivation wouldn't be there. So if you're going to try and make a point, it's just going to fall apart. So just a thing to think about. That was just a good point you made. I was like, oh yeah, that's important to think about. Like, what do your characters believe and how will that change their outlook? And you may be writing a character you're like, well, this is their belief and motivation, therefore they probably would assume this. And I don't agree with that. That's okay. That's okay.
Go with that.
Go with it.
Because it can be valuable too to have people that disagree writing about certain viewpoints. It's a different perspective. And I think we should be encouraging that too.
Absolutely.
So kind of a weird example on that. I recently watched Midnight Mass. Have you heard of this? Okay. So it's a Netflix show. It's 7 episodes. I don't think it's a series. I think it's just one season. I'm going to spoil it slightly. So if you haven't seen it and want to, take that into account. It's essentially this guy, he's a priest. He's on like this little island community. There's like a couple hundred people, and he's the priest of the church, and he leaves to go to Jerusalem, and he gets attacked by a vampire and turned into a vampire. So he comes back and he's like, I'm going to turn everyone in the island onto a vampire. And it's like all of these like similarities between Christianity and vampirism, which is very interesting because it's like eternal life and drinking blood and like all of that kind of stuff. So there's some points too where it's like eerily convincing, right? He's like,
Whoa.
you should definitely do this. And I'm like, I know you're wrong. I know you're wrong, but it's not immediately obvious how, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's very interesting. And I think for the most part, it's very fair. There's like this Muslim family, this father and son living on the island, and they're like, you guys are crazy. And there's like a gay woman and a couple of atheists and, a guy that used to be a Catholic and then he's lost his faith. And so like, it's a very good mix of characters.
Yeah.
But the priest is so interesting. I love him as a character because he's very convinced that this is the right thing to do for the people on the island, right? He's like, if some of them have to die so that the others can like have eternal life, then that's a miracle. That's a great thing. And then it gets to the end where like there's been this like huge massacre, right? Like people have like killed themselves and then they come back because they've been taking like vampire blood in the communion and they start eating everyone else. And it's super intense. And he sees it and he's like, oh my gosh, I was so wrong. But at this point, he has so converted everyone that they can't see it. And he like sits down with like this woman that like they were, kind of together when they were younger. It sounds like there was an affair. And so her daughter is actually his daughter. And so this is revealed and everything. And he's like, really, I just wanted all of this because you were getting old and you were about to die. And I wanted to save you. And so he's like, all this time, he's like, my priority is the church. I'm doing this because it's God. And then at the end, he's like, nope, it's because it was eternal life. I wanted you to not die. And it makes sense character wise because when, he's talking about things, he's like, he's very focused on the idea of eternal life and not dying and resurrection. And you're like, that's all great. That's all true. Those are themes in Christianity, but it's also not the point for us necessarily. Like we're not supposed to believe that God is going to bring us back to life when we die of cancer, like in the way that he was kind of talking about it. Yeah. And so it's like, that's what was so flawed in his logic. And you're like, gosh, you're so wrong. And he gets to the end when he realizes he's wrong. And then he's like, and I know why. I know where my priority went wrong. Yeah. And, she's like understanding because she loved him, but she's also horrified. And she's like, didn't want you to do that for me, but thank you, I guess.
She's like,
and it's just a very, yeah, it's just a very interesting motivation. So like to come full circle about why I brought this up, he has this priority and it's portrayed very well and it comes across as so legitimate. Like he's very passionate about it. He's also very wrong. And he does come to that conclusion later on. And so I just think he was a really interesting character study for how people kind of push their beliefs. And sometimes the thing at the core of them is not what they are saying or even what they might think it is. So this is where you play with character. This is where your characters need to be at least a little different from you sometimes so that you can see that clearly. So you can see how their motivations are off because we typically don't see where we're wrong, but we can see where other people are wrong. And like, you shouldn't go too hard on that. But like, if you're writing a character that's different from you, you're probably going to be able to see that journey a little differently and a little better maybe because you see the problems in it. And so let yourself explore that. Don't just try to have soapboxing characters telling people what to think because that's very annoying.
It is very, very annoying. I totally agree.
Anyway.
On a related, but a completely unrelated note, have you heard of the movie Velocipaster?
I have not. I'm intrigued though.
So am I. I forget who sent it to me, but somebody sent me a meme and it was like an IMDb listing that with like 4 stars for this movie called Velocipaster. But this guy, he's a pastor, and he basically finds out he can turn into a dinosaur, and this like prostitute convinces him to fight crime or something as a dinosaur. Wow. And everything about it is something that I'm like, I have to watch this movie. I have to watch
It's an movie. Ash movie.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm like, what? Anyways, so I don't know that there's any like really moral message in that. We'll see, I guess. But at first maybe. you were like vampire priest, and I was like, oh, I know of a dinosaur pastor, and I was like, oh.
I've heard this story before.
Nope, not at all, because yours was actually a really interesting character study and very supportive cool. of our point that we're making. And I was like, what if a pastor turned into a dinosaur and fought crime?
This is the fundamental difference between you and me. Sometimes I'm just like, let me go off on this intellectual tangent. And you're like, but what if a pastor was also a dinosaur?
It shows in my books. It shows in my weird books that I write too. Yeah. On that note, how's writing been going for you?
Still nothing. Super boring. I'm sorry. Gosh, have I done anything? I made some cool aesthetic videos and collages just to like aesthetic. Aesthetic. I like aesthetic better. To just kind of like get into it. So there's that. And that is all. That is all.
All right.
What about you? It seems like you might have an interesting thing for this because
I'm gonna have a little bit of an update. It's not like a really big writing update. As for writing, I haven't worked any more on that little whip, but I've thought about it more. Like not my primary, one of my secondary whips. I've thought about my primary whip and continue to stress about it. I'm trying really hard. I like how we do advice on how not to do that like every other episode, and I'm still like, I'm panicking.
Can't take it.
Yeah. So, anyways, but I did realize I'm such a dummy. This whole time I've been like, I really wish that the book I published, Space Alien Southerners and Saving the World by Ashley O'Rourke, if anybody's into, they're like, we're not, stop doing that. Another
it's
very
like
not subtle
Velocipaster.
No, they're like, get out of here with your Velocipaster. Get out of here with your space aliens in Texas. Anyways, it's on Amazon. So I published it there, and immediately I got like 3 people being like, hey, I want this in an audiobook. Is this an audiobook? I want to like listen to it, but I don't have time to read it. And I was like, no, if only there was something I could do about that. And then I sat there with that attitude, if only there was something I could do about that for like, I mean, it was almost a year ago, I think, that I published. No, it was like it was like 6 months ago. So for like 6 months here, I've been like, yeah, I wish I could do something about that. It's too bad that I have professional recording equipment. Like, yes, I can. So anyways, once my voice is not so disgusting and my schedule chills out, which that's relatively speaking, but relatively speaking, my schedule is going to really open up after the end of this week, relatively speaking. So I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to record my own book as an audiobook. So if you guys are like, we hate listening to Ash's voice, this won't be for you. If you're like, I don't really mind it, this could be for you. But anyways, I'm excited because I also get that, like, I'm too busy to like sit down and actually read a book so many days. And then I want to listen to an audiobook, but I either can't justify spending the money when I already spent the money on the hard copy book or, you know, whatever. So anyways, I'm excited about that because I'm also kind of like, if it goes well, I would love to record audiobooks. Like I read books anyways. And so there's some like, you can like apply to be an audiobook reader places too. So I think I'm going to give it a shot and we'll see. I mean, will it be a little bit monotonous? Probably. Will it be extraordinarily time consuming? 100% it will. Do I have the time? No. Am I going to do it anyways? Yeah, I am. So
eventually you'll have it done. Just do a little bit every day.
That's what I'm thinking. Exactly. So I'm excited about that. Hopefully you guys are excited about that. Most likely you guys are undecided about that, but I will keep you guys updated on the journey. So that's like my pseudo writing update. It's more like book publishing
bookish
promotion update. It's more like a bookish update, but I am excited about it though. I've obviously never recorded an audiobook and I don't know if I'm great at doing voices. So now I'm torn. Like, should I do character voices? You guys like message and let me know. Should I just read it all in my normal voice or should I try and do like character voices after I don't sound like a smoker?
Yeah, you do have only maybe 5 big characters.
Yeah.
You don't tend to have a lot. So it would be, you could make them very different. You wouldn't have to have 50 different character voices.
Yeah, exactly. I could do that. Yeah. I could do different voices. Most likely, I feel like I'm going to end up doing like kind of differences in inflection in the characters. And I feel like the main character, because it's from her perspective, I feel like that one will be the most different because it'll probably sound the most like me because she's very influenced by me, except she's different in some significant ways. But so we'll see. I don't know. I've never had anyone like listen to me read out loud. So there's a big part of me that's like, this is so scary. People are going to just listen to me read a book out loud because I don't know if I'm pleasant to listen to. I mean, hopefully it's not totally unpleasant. I've been podcasting for over a year now, but still it's not the same as reading a book to someone.
Are you going to do like sound effects? You do like alien sounds, like shoom, shoom, shoom.
God, I wish
that was terrible.
If only. I wish, but I would know how to find like the right sound effects I could license correctly and how to license them correctly. So unfortunately, not probably.
Because aren't audiobooks like normally divided into chapters? Do you know how to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I can do that. So it will have, cool. I mean, it'll be a professional grade audiobook. But it will be a basic one. So it's not going to have the extra sound effects and music, but it'll be a solid audiobook. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like I listened to a sample of the Twilight audiobook and it was the same. And I was like, okay, I mean, I can do this. So I'm excited. But remember that time that we did read Harry Potter out loud in college and acted it out, as we had everybody in the room acting out the scenes as we took turns reading Harry Potter aloud?
It is one of
British
my
accents.
Yeah, it's one of my like highest placed memories in my brain, right? It's like up there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was a good time.
It was a great time. Like a video memory came up a little while ago of like, I don't remember. I think
it was just like improv, right? Like I think it was Dean. He was reading it, and then the rest of us in the room were like, "I'll be Hedwig," right?
Yeah, it's like perfect. Exactly. And I just remember, I think it was the scene where they were dropping off baby Harry, and I was like, I had the little memory came up, and I was just like, God, we were so awesome.
We only did like 1 or 2 chapters, but it was phenomenal. It was great.
It was absolutely A+ acting all around. Anyway, so this is going to be like that, but not visual. But I am having like a lot of flashbacks to that with this endeavor. But that's my update.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, guys, did you like how my voice broke? Well, guys. Guys, if you are not completely turned away by this episode and my horrible voice, you guys can follow us on social media. We are on Instagram and TikTok. We are the Scripturian Society. You can visit our website, storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. We've got all kinds of merch there. Or if you really, really want to, or you just only kind of really want to, you can support us on Patreon at Story Siren Studio. So check it out. There's also a writers group on Patreon. It's free to join. It's as simple as you literally just go ahead and put a comment in there. We'll see it. We'll reply. That's the whole thing. So it really is that easy. And the writers group is free, because I do believe that writers groups should be free. So that's exciting. You guys can go check that out. If you guys have something specific you want us to talk about on the pod or on social media or what have you, you can DM us on the social, or you can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. Again, we will see it. We will reply. We will be so flattered that you wanted to reach out to us and talk to us, you beautiful souls. So I think that's all we got for you guys this week. So until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.